Number. A single human war vessel arrived, sending shockwaves of fear across the stars. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the first detection. Representatives from 43 different species sat in their designated sections of the massive chamber. Their various forms of communication, creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic pulses, and translated speech that filled the air with tension. Admiral Zekthar of the Vorthak Empire stood at the central podium, his four arms gesturing frantically as holographic displays showed the readings that had sent every military commander in the galaxy into a state of panic. His scaled hide had turned the deep purple that indicated extreme stress among his kind. The vessel appeared at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, approximately 6 standard hours ago, Zekthar announced, his voice carrying the weight of someone delivering news of an approaching apocalypse. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The ship's design is completely foreign, and its power output exceeds our most advanced dreadnoughts by a factor of 12. Ambassador Lyrics of the Confederation of Peaceful Worlds, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns, spoke with barely contained fear. Have we attempted communication? Perhaps this is a misunderstanding. Not all species are naturally aggressive. A bitter laugh echoed from the section reserved for the Corvan war clans. General Throck, his massive frame covered in battle scars, slammed one of his 6 fists against his console. Peaceful? That ship broadcasts one message continuously in over 300 languages, including several we thought were extinct. It says simply, "This is Terran vessel retribution. All hostile actions against human colonies will cease immediately, or face the consequences." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed to quiet as the implications sank in. "Humans," whispered Science Minister Quell of the Hive Mind Collective, her insectoid features twitching with nervous energy. But the human homeworld was destroyed over 50 years ago. We witnessed the extinction bombardment ourselves. The hegemony made sure of that. Supreme Chancellor Vex of the Galactic Hegemony, the very organization responsible for Earth's destruction, maintained his composure despite the concerned murmurs rippling through his delegation. His metallic voice carried artificial calm. The human species was confirmed extinct following their failure to comply with galactic integration protocols. This vessel must be using their designation as a psychological tactic. No species has ever survived a complete planetary sterilization. But Admiral Zekthar's next words shattered that comfortable delusion. "We've analyzed the ship's construction materials using quantum resonance scanners. The hull composition matches samples we took from human vessels during the final battles at Earth. The isotopic signatures are identical. This ship is definitely of human origin." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. The hegemony had made humans extinct, specifically because they had proven to be one of the most adaptive and resilient species ever encountered. In the brief century between first contact and Earth's destruction, humans had somehow reverse-engineered technologies that took other species millennia to develop. They had shown an disturbing tendency to not just survive but thrive under conditions that would break other civilizations. But how? Demanded Coordinator Nexus of the Trade Federation, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "We monitored every human ship during the evacuation attempts. They were all destroyed or captured. The few thousand humans taken as specimens for research died in captivity within months." Fleet Commander Yelena of the Outer Rim Alliance, her blue-skinned features marked with worry, brought up a troubling point. What if some humans escaped our detection? What if they had colony ships we never found? A species capable of surviving in space for 50 years, building ships like this. She gestured at the holographic display showing the enormous vessel. They would have evolved into something far more dangerous than what we originally faced. The assembled representatives studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The human ship was enormous, easily 3 times the length of the largest hegemony battlecruiser. Its design was unlike anything in known space. Angular and predatory. with weapon systems that defied conventional understanding. Energy readings suggested it possessed shields, capable of deflecting the combined firepower of an entire fleet, and its offensive capabilities appeared to exceed anything previously recorded. The ship has been broadcasting its warning for 6 hours, Admiral Zekthar continued. But it hasn't moved from its position at the system's edge. Long-range observations suggest it's waiting. Number 22. Waiting for what? Asked Ambassador Lyrics. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency communication channels activated, and panicked reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The massive screens around the chamber lit up with incoming transmissions from hundreds of worlds. Report from the Altair system, called out a communications officer. Another human vessel has appeared near the hegemony mining operation. Same design, same message. Vega system reporting identical contact. Human ship detected in the Proxima Centauri region. Contact confirmed in the Sirius system. Within minutes, reports were streaming in from 47 different systems across the galaxy. Each report was identical. A massive human warship appearing at the edge of inhabited systems, broadcasting the same warning, then waiting in position, like a predator, watching its prey. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives shouted questions and accusations at each other. Species that had participated in Earth's destruction demanded to know how this was possible. Those who had opposed the genocide claimed vindication while secretly fearing retaliation. Supreme Chancellor Vex finally stood, his mechanical voice cutting through the noise with amplified authority. Order! We must respond to this crisis systematically. His cold gaze swept across the assembled aliens. The hegemony takes full responsibility for the human situation. We will dispatch our finest battle groups to neutralize these vessels before they can cause panic among civilian populations. You fool! General Throck roared, his warrior instincts screaming warnings. Did you learn nothing from the First War? Humans don't make empty threats, and they don't reveal themselves without a plan. This isn't 47 random ships. This is a coordinated operation across the entire galaxy. Science Minister Quell's analysis sent chills through everyone present. The timing is too perfect. These ships appeared simultaneously across distances that should require months to coordinate, even with the fastest communication methods. Either humans have developed instantaneous communication technology, or... She paused, her compound eyes reflecting genuine terror. These ships have been in position for some time, waiting for a synchronized reveal. The implications were staggering. It meant humans hadn't just survived their supposed extinction. They had spent 50 years planning, building, and positioning an entire fleet throughout the galaxy without being detected. It suggested a level of technological advancement and strategic thinking that surpassed anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. Ambassador Lyrics's crystalline form flickered with deep concern. If humans have been planning this for 50 years, what do they want? Pure revenge? The complete destruction of our civilizations? Admiral Zekthar pulled up tactical analyses of the human vessels. The ships are positioned near every major population center that participated in Earth's destruction. But they're also near strategic resource points, major trade routes, and military installations. This isn't just about revenge, it's about control. As if summoned by their discussion, every screen in the chamber suddenly displayed the same image, the bridge of a human starship. The figure that appeared was clearly human. But 50 years of space survival had changed them. The man was tall and lean, with pale skin marked by the subtle signs of long-term life in artificial environments. His eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had spent decades planning this moment. I am Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Exodus Fleet, the human said, his voice carrying the weight of unimaginable loss and determination. 50 years ago, you declared humanity extinct. You were wrong. He gestured to something off-screen, and tactical displays appeared showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. We are the survivors. We are the children and grandchildren of the million humans who escaped your genocide in generation ships you never found. We have spent 50 years growing strong in the dark between the stars, building these vessels, and planning for this day. The assembled aliens listened in horrified fascination as Admiral Chen continued. You destroyed our home. You murdered 10 billion innocent people because you feared what we might become. Today, you learn what we did become. Supreme Chancellor Vex attempted to activate his communication system, but found it blocked. The humans had somehow taken control of all Galactic Council communication networks simultaneously. Your message has been received across 47 systems, Admiral Chen stated. Every world that participated in Earth's destruction now hosts one of our vessels. We are not here for random destruction or mindless revenge. We are here to establish a new order. The Admiral's image leaned forward slightly, and his next words sent ice through the hearts of every being present. You have 24 hours to evacuate all military personnel from human colonial systems. Any armed vessel found in those regions after that deadline will be destroyed without warning. Former human colonies will be reclaimed. Former human citizens taken as specimens will be returned if they still live. He paused, letting the ultimatum sink in. Humanity spent 50 years learning hard lessons about survival, adaptation, and the consequences of mercy. We offered peace once before, and you responded with extinction. We will not make that mistake again. The transmission continued with a list of specific demands: the return of all stolen human technology and artifacts, the establishment of human sovereignty over their former colonial territories, and most shocking of all, the trial of those responsible for the genocide under human law. This is impossible, whispered Coordinator Nexus. 47 ships cannot control an entire galaxy. The mathematics don't support it. But Admiral Zekthar's analysis painted a different picture. Each ship is positioned at a critical strategic point. They don't need to control everything directly. They just need to control the right things. Cut off major trade routes, threaten key resource worlds, hold weapons to the heads of major population centers. A small force positioned correctly can paralyze a much larger one. As the human admiral's transmission ended, the chamber was left in stunned silence. The assembled representatives faced a terrifying reality. The species they had tried to exterminate had not only survived but had returned stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous than before. The Galactic Council, which had ruled space for millennia through superior numbers and established power structures, suddenly found themselves checkmate by a species they had considered extinct. The humans weren't just back. They were holding the entire galaxy hostage, and everyone present knew that these weren't the same desperate refugees who had fled Earth 50 years ago. These humans had been forged in the cold vacuum of space, shaped by loss and hardened by decades of preparation. They had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had learned to wage war not just with weapons and ships, but with patience, planning, and perfect coordination across impossible distances. Number A. Single human war vessel arrived, sending shockwaves of fear across the stars. Admiral Crix of the Hegemony Third Fleet had built his career on decisive action and overwhelming force. Standing on the bridge of his flagship Times, Dominator Asterisk, surrounded by the most advanced warships the galaxy had ever seen, he felt confident that the human threat would be neutralized within hours. His battle group consisted of 57 capital ships, 200 escort vessels, and enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Target the human vessel in the Kepler 442 system, he commanded, his metallic voice resonating through the bridge. All ships are to focus fire and destroy it before it can transmit our position to the other human ships. We end this rebellion before it begins. The massive Hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. Long-range scanners immediately locked onto the solitary human vessel hanging motionless near the system's edge. Compared to the assembled might of the Hegemony war machine, it looked almost insignificant. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, The human ship isn't moving. They're not even raising shields. It's almost like they're waiting for us to attack. Admiral Crick smiled coldly. 50 years of being hunted in space had clearly driven the surviving humans mad. Then we'll oblige them. All ships, open fire. The first salvo from the hegemony fleet was magnificent in its destruction. Hundreds of energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic rounds streaked across space toward the human vessel. Enough concentrated firepower to destroy a dozen normal warships struck the Time's retribution time simultaneously, and absolutely nothing happened. The human ship sat unchanged, its hull unmarked, its systems apparently unaffected. Even more disturbing, it still hadn't raised its shields. The entire hegemony bombardment had simply been absorbed by the vessel's hull, as if the weapons were mere flashlights. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "Sir, our weapons had no effect at all. The human ship's hull composition, we can't even scratch it." Before Admiral Crix could respond, the human vessel finally moved. It wasn't the desperate evasive action he expected from a cornered ship. Instead, the Time's retribution times slowly rotated to face the hegemony fleet, and every officer on every bridge suddenly understood what true terror felt like. The human ship began to glow. Energy readings spiked beyond anything their instruments could measure. Weapon ports opened along the alien vessel's hull, not the dozen or so gun turrets typical of conventional warships, but hundreds of openings that pulsed with contained power. The space around the human ship began to distort, as if reality itself was being bent by the forces building within it. "Admiral Chen to Hegemony Fleet," came the calm voice over all communication channels. "You have just demonstrated exactly why your species is unfit to govern the galaxy. You resort to violence immediately, without attempting communication, negotiation, or even understanding the situation you face." The human admiral's image appeared on screens throughout the hegemony fleet. He looked completely relaxed, as if discussing the weather rather than addressing an enemy force that outnumbered him 57-1. "You destroyed our world because you feared what we might become," Admiral Chen continued. "Allow me to show you exactly what you created." The Time's retribution times fired. It wasn't the conventional energy beams or projectiles that galactic militaries understood. Instead, streams of coherent energy that seemed to bend space itself reached out from the human vessel and touched 3 hegemony battleships. The effect was immediate and absolute. The targeted ships simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode or break apart. They were there one moment and gone the next, as if erased from reality. Admiral Crix stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 of his most powerful warships, each capable of reducing a planet to rubble, had been eliminated without even leaving debris behind. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern," he screamed. "Maximum evasion, return fire." But the human ship wasn't finished. As the hegemony fleet desperately tried to spread out and present smaller targets, the Time's retribution times demonstrated another terrifying capability. It began moving through space in ways that violated every known law of physics. The massive vessel didn't accelerate gradually like normal ships. Instead, it simply appeared in different locations, teleporting instantly across thousands of kilometers. Each time it materialized, more hegemony ships vanished under its impossible weapons. The human vessel moved through the fleet like a predator among prey, untouchable and unstoppable. "Sir," called his communications officer, panic clear in her voice. "We're receiving similar reports from the other 46 systems. Human ships are engaging our forces everywhere simultaneously. Fleet Command is reporting total communication blackout from the 5th, 8th, and 12th battle groups." Within 20 minutes, Admiral Crix found himself commanding the remnants of a once mighty fleet. Of his original 57 capital ships, only 12 remained, and those were heavily damaged from failed attempts to ram the impossible human vessel. The Time's retribution times hung in space nearby, completely undamaged, as if the entire battle had been nothing more than a training exercise. "This is Admiral Chen," came the human voice again. "I'm transmitting the location of the nearest medical facility to your surviving crew members. You have 15 minutes to evacuate your wounded before we destroy your remaining ships. This is not a negotiation. You can't. Admiral Crix protested, his professional composure finally cracking. The Galactic Convention forbids attacking medical evacuation vessels. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Finally, Admiral Chen's voice returned, colder than the vacuum of space. The same Galactic Convention that protected civilian populations during warfare? The same laws that prohibited genocide? The same rules your hegemony ignored when you sterilized Earth? The human's laugh was bitter. You taught us that laws only exist for those too weak to ignore them. We learned that lesson well. Meanwhile, in the Vega system, Commander Yelena, of the Outer Rim Alliance, was having her own revelation about the new reality. Her exploration fleet had encountered the human vessel times, Vengeance times, while investigating reports of impossible energy readings. Unlike the hegemony's immediate aggression, she had attempted peaceful contact. The human response had been unexpectedly civilized. Commander Yelena, came the voice of Captain Sarah Martinez from the human ship. Our records show that the Outer Rim Alliance opposed the Earth Genocide Resolution 50 years ago. Your fleet is welcome to remain in this system, but we require information about hegemony, military positions, and the location of any surviving human captives. Yelena found herself in the surreal position of negotiating with the representative of a supposedly extinct species while staring at a warship that dwarfed her entire fleet combined. Captain Martinez, I want to help, but you must understand the position this puts us in. The Alliance has treaties with the hegemony. We can't simply betray our agreements. Commander, Captain Martinez replied. Let me show you something that might change your perspective. The main screen on Yelena's bridge lit up with images that made her crew gasp in horror. They were viewing the interior of hegemony research facilities, vast laboratories where human beings were kept in conditions that violated every known standard of civilized behavior. Men, women, and children were subjected to experiments that were clearly torture disguised as science. These facilities exist on 17 different worlds, Captain Martinez explained. The hegemony told the galaxy that all human captives died naturally in custody. They lied. These people have been kept alive for 50 years as experimental subjects. Some of them are the original survivors from Earth. Others are their children, born in captivity. Yelena felt sick. The Alliance had always prided itself on ethical behavior, but they had trusted hegemony reports about human extinction. We didn't know. Now you do, Captain Martinez said quietly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The answer came swiftly. Within hours, Alliance forces were providing the humans with detailed intelligence about hegemony positions, research facility locations, and military protocols. The revelation that genocide had been followed by 50 years of systematic torture had shattered any remaining loyalty to the galactic order. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as human ships demonstrated their impossible capabilities to different species. The Corvan war clans, after witnessing human vessels destroy entire hegemony fleets single-handedly, offered immediate military alliance. The Trade Federation, faced with the choice between economic disaster and cooperation, began providing the humans with financial resources and supply lines. But perhaps the most significant development occurred in the Altair system, where the human ship times, reckoning times, encountered something unexpected. A small fleet of refugee vessels carrying survivors from a dozen different species. These were beings who had been displaced by hegemony expansion and were living as nomads in the outer systems. Captain David Park of the Times Reckoning Times made a decision that surprised everyone, including his own crew. Instead of ignoring the refugees or treating them as potential threats, he offered them something unprecedented: protection under human authority. These beings never participated in Earth's destruction, he explained in his report to Admiral Chen. Many of them are victims of the same system that destroyed our world. If we're going to build a new order in this galaxy, we need to be better than our enemies were. The decision to protect non-human refugees sent shockwaves through both the Galactic Council and the human fleet itself. It demonstrated that despite 50 years of hardship and loss, humans hadn't lost their capacity for compassion. But it also showed that they were thinking beyond simple revenge. They were planning for a future where they would rule rather than destroy. Back at the Galactic Council chambers, the reports streaming in from across the galaxy painted a picture of complete strategic collapse. Hegemony fleets were being systematically destroyed by single human vessels that seemed immune to conventional weapons. Allied species were switching sides as the moral implications of 50 years of lies became clear. Resource worlds were falling under human control without a shot being fired, as local populations chose surrender over annihilation. Supreme Chancellor Vex, his metallic composure finally cracking, called for an emergency session. "The situation is untenable," he announced to the remaining loyal representatives. "Human technological superiority exceeds our worst projections. They're not just more advanced than we believed. They're operating under completely different laws of physics." Science Minister Quell had spent the previous hours analyzing captured footage of human ships in action. Her report was devastating in its implications. The human vessels appear to be using controlled spatial distortion for both propulsion and defense. Their weapons manipulate fundamental forces in ways we can't understand, let alone counter. Based on energy signatures, each human ship possesses more firepower than our entire remaining fleet. The assembled aliens faced a terrible truth. They weren't just losing a war. They were facing an opponent so far beyond their capabilities that traditional concepts of military resistance had become meaningless. The humans hadn't just survived extinction. They had evolved into something that could barely be considered the same species. General Throck, his warrior pride struggling with pragmatic reality, voiced what everyone was thinking but afraid to say. "We need to surrender. Not negotiate, not seek terms. Surrender unconditionally before they decide that mercy is a luxury they can't afford." The chamber fell silent as the representatives contemplated the unthinkable. The complete capitulation of a galactic civilization to 47 ships crewed by the descendants of refugees they had once hunted to. Near extinction. Outside, reports continued to arrive of human ships systematically dismantling the infrastructure of galactic government, not through random destruction, but through precise, calculated strikes that crippled military capability while leaving civilian populations largely unharmed. It was the kind of surgical warfare that required perfect intelligence, flawless coordination, and technological superiority so complete that enemy response was irrelevant. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating that victory had been inevitable from the moment they revealed themselves. 50 years of preparation, growth, and technological development in the depths of space had created something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had transcended normal limitations and become something approaching the godlike. The age of human rule wasn't coming. It had already arrived. The only question now was whether the existing galactic powers would be allowed to exist under it. The age of human extinction was over. The age of human supremacy was about to begin. Number. A single human war vessel arrived, sending shockwaves of fear across the stars. 3 months had passed since the human fleet had revealed itself to the galaxy, and the transformation of galactic civilization was both swift and absolute. The great chambers of the former Galactic Council now served as the administrative center for what the humans called the Terran Protectorate. Though everyone understood that protection came with very specific conditions, Ambassador Lyrics, of the former Confederation of Peaceful Worlds, found herself in the unusual position of serving as liaison between human authorities and the surviving alien governments. Her crystalline form had grown dimmer over the past weeks, a physical manifestation of the stress that came with navigating the new reality of human dominance. She stood now in the rebuilt council chambers, watching as Admiral Marcus Chen addressed the assembled representatives of 43 species. The human leader looked exactly as he had 3 months earlier. Calm, controlled, and utterly confident in his authority. But Lyrics had learned to read the subtle signs that revealed the immense burden he carried. The hegemony research facilities have been completely dismantled, Admiral Chen announced. We have recovered 47,000 human survivors from various experimental programs across 17 worlds. Additionally, we discovered evidence of similar programs targeting 34 other species. He paused, letting that information sink in. The victims of these programs will receive full medical treatment and reparations under Terran authority. The revelation sent another wave of shock through the chamber. The scope of hegemony crimes had grown with each investigation, revealing decades of systematic abuse that made their genocide of Earth seem like merely the beginning of their atrocities. General Throck of the Corvan war clans, who had adapted to the new order with surprising speed, spoke up. Admiral, the war clans formally request permission to hunt down the remaining hegemony leadership. Our codes of honor demand blood payment for what we have learned. Your request is noted, Admiral Chen replied diplomatically, but justice will be administered through Terran courts. We will not allow the chaos of revenge to destabilize the transition to the new order. He gestured to a side screen. Number 4. However, I can inform you that former Supreme Chancellor Vex was captured attempting to escape to the Andromeda Galaxy. He will stand trial for crimes against sentience. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives contemplated the implications. The humans weren't just powerful enough to enforce their will, they were demonstrating that they intended to create a genuinely just system, rather than simply replacing one tyranny with another. Science Minister Quell, who had spent months studying captured human technology with their permission, provided regular reports that only increased the awe and fear surrounding their new rulers. The technological gap is even larger than we initially calculated, she announced. Human vessels don't just bend space for propulsion. They exist partially outside normal dimensional space. That's why our weapons had no effect. We were essentially shooting at shadows. She brought up holographic displays showing the impossible architecture of human ships. But more importantly, we've discovered that each human vessel is not just a warship. It's a fully functional colony ship, capable of supporting hundreds of thousands of people. The humans didn't just plan for war. They planned for the complete reconstruction of their civilization anywhere in the galaxy. Ambassador Lyrics found this revelation particularly significant. It meant the humans hadn't just been preparing for revenge. They had been preparing to rebuild and govern. The implications for long-term galactic stability were profound. Captain Sarah Martinez of the Times, Vengeance Times, had become something of a celebrity among the refugee populations that were now under human protection. Her ship had become a beacon of hope for displaced peoples throughout the galaxy. And her approach to governance was setting the standard for human-alien relations. The key principle of the Protectorate, she explained to a gathering of refugee leaders, is that strength serves those who cannot protect themselves. Humans learned hard lessons about what happens when power is concentrated in the hands of those who view others as inferior. We will not repeat those mistakes. Her refugee settlements had become models of interspecies cooperation that seemed almost utopian compared to the rigid hierarchies of the former galactic order. Humans provided protection, advanced technology, and resources, while alien populations contributed their own unique skills and knowledge to building something entirely new. But perhaps the most significant change was happening on the former human colony worlds. For 50 years, these planets had been strip-mined by the hegemony, their ecosystems destroyed, and their populations enslaved or displaced. Now, human terraforming technology was restoring these worlds with impossible speed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the chief science officer aboard the Times Retribution Asterisk, had overseen the restoration of New Geneva, humanity's former agricultural center. Standing in what had once been a barren wasteland and was now a thriving ecosystem, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. When we fled Earth as refugees, she told her assembled team of human and alien scientists, we carried with us not just the survivors of our species, but the accumulated knowledge of our entire civilization. 50 years of development in space, without the constraints of planetary gravity or atmospheric limitations, allowed us to advance in ways that would have been impossible on Earth. The restoration projects were demonstrations of power that left even friendly alien species somewhat terrified. Humans could literally reshape worlds, turning dead rocks into garden paradises in a matter of months. The technology required to accomplish such feats suggested capabilities that bordered on the divine. However, the most profound changes were philosophical rather than technological. The human approach to governance was based on concepts that were revolutionary in galactic terms. The idea that strength created responsibility rather than privilege, that different species could cooperate as equals rather than compete for dominance, and that justice should be universal rather than selective. These concepts were being tested in the trials of former hegemony leadership. The proceedings were broadcast throughout the galaxy, and they revealed a level of systematic evil that shocked even species that had considered themselves cynical about galactic politics. During the trial of Supreme Chancellor Vex, evidence was presented that the hegemony had planned the systematic elimination of dozens of species they considered inferior. Earth had simply been the first target in a much larger campaign of genocide that would have eventually encompassed half the galaxy. The defendant stands accused of orchestrating the deaths of over 100 billion sentient beings across 17 different species, announced Chief Justice Sarah Kim, a human who had spent 30 years developing new legal frameworks for interspecies justice. These crimes were committed not out of necessity or self-defense, but from a deliberate policy of species superiority that violated every principle of civilized behavior. The evidence presented was overwhelming. Detailed records of planned genocides, experimental programs designed to find more efficient methods of extermination, and economic analyses treating the deaths of entire civilizations as acceptable costs of expansion. But the humans' approach to justice proved as transformative as their approach to governance. Rather than simple revenge, they implemented systems designed to prevent such atrocities from ever occurring again. Vex and his co-conspirators faced life sentences, but they would spend those sentences working to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. Justice without redemption is just sophisticated revenge, Admiral Chen explained to the assembled representatives. We will not allow the cycle of violence that destroyed our world to continue. Even those who committed the greatest crimes will have the opportunity to atone through service. The transformation of galactic civilization accelerated as more species chose to join the Protectorate rather than face isolation in an increasingly human-dominated galaxy. The benefits were undeniable. Unprecedented peace, rapid technological advancement, and protection from the kind of systematic oppression that had characterized the previous order. The Corvan war clans found new purpose as guardians of refugee settlements. The Outer Rim Alliance became humanity's primary partner in exploring uncharted regions of the galaxy. Even former hegemony worlds requested admission to the Protectorate as their populations learned the truth about their government's crimes. But perhaps the most significant indicator of the new order's success was the response of the younger generation of aliens who had grown up under human protection. To them, the idea of species-based hierarchies seemed as archaic as the idea of planetary warfare seemed to humans who had grown up in the peaceful settlements of the Protectorate. Captain David Park of the Times, Reckoning **, observing a group of young aliens and humans working together on a terraforming project, reflected on how far they had all come. My grandfather died defending Earth, he told his mixed crew. He never could have imagined that his sacrifice would eventually lead to this, not human domination over other species, but genuine cooperation between all thinking beings. The galaxy had been transformed, but not in the way anyone had expected. The humans had returned, not as conquerors, seeking to repeat the mistakes of their oppressors, but as builders, creating something entirely new. Their technological superiority was absolute, but they used that power to elevate rather than dominate. The 47 human vessels that had once seemed like harbingers of apocalypse had become the foundation stones of a new civilization. Each ship served as both protector and teacher, spreading human knowledge while learning from the unique perspectives of thousands of different species. Admiral Chen stood once again in the former Galactic Council chambers, but this time he wasn't delivering ultimatums or demanding surrender. Instead, he was announcing the completion of the first phase of galactic reconstruction, the establishment of permanent human settlements on 200 worlds, the integration of 43 species into the Protectorate, and the creation of interspecies institutions that would ensure such a transformation never needed to happen again. 50 years ago, our species faced extinction because a powerful few decided we were too dangerous to live, he told the assembled representatives. They were right about our danger, but they were wrong about what made us dangerous. Our threat was never our weapons or our ships. Our threat was our refusal to accept that might makes right, that some beings matter less than others, that justice is a luxury reserved for the powerful. He gestured to the mixed crowds of humans and aliens working together throughout the chamber. We return to you, not as refugees seeking charity, but as builders offering partnership. The galaxy that destroyed Earth no longer exists. In its place, we offer something humanity has always dreamed of. A truly universal civilization, where every thinking being has value, where strength protects rather than exploits, and where the mistakes of the past guide us toward a better future. The transformation was complete. Humanity had not just survived extinction, they had used that experience to become something the galaxy had never seen before. They had become the protectors of the very diversity that their enemies had sought to eliminate, the guardians of the weak, and the builders of a civilization that valued justice over power. The age of human dominance had indeed arrived. But it looked nothing like what anyone had expected. It looked like hope.